Marty Raney was creating a life that most people wouldn't ever dare to contemplate long before Homestead Rescue ever appeared on television. Living amid bears, raising a family in the harsh wilderness of Alaska, and logging on floating camps. However, the tough self-assurance you see on film is just the tip of the iceberg. The tale behind it is much more complex, dramatic, and intense than the show ever reveals. And a number of unexpected scandals and personal disappointments in recent years have left many people thinking about one thing. What was Marty Raney's actual fate? The narrative of Marty Raney begins on July 28, 1956, in North Bend, Washington, where he was essentially born into the wild. He never liked city life, even as a child. The closest neighbor was a mile distant from his childhood house, which was located at the end of Mount Si Road, and that was ideal for Marty. He spent his days climbing, scrambling, and exploring while growing up at the foot of Mount Tenerife. He had no technical training, just a lot of interest and enthusiasm. He was trekking 35 meters through the Cascades by the time he was 12 or 13 years old. That unadulterated passion for nature only deepened, strong enough that, at the age of 16, he dropped out of school, started working as a logger, and continued to want for more wildness. At the age of 18, he took the action that would change the course of his life. He made his way to Alaska. He will never forget the first time he saw Alaska from the cockpit of a 737. As they took off, a buddy of his who was employed by the airline dragged him up front, providing him with an aerial perspective of the untamed terrain he would eventually call home. For Marty, it was like gazing down from heaven at his destiny. His first Alaskan home wasn't even on land when he eventually got there. In the vicinity of Prince of Wales Island, there was a floating logging camp, bobbing on the water, completely off-grid. Back then, logging was beautiful, hard work, and Marty got there in time to witness the final phase of that way of life. The trees were huge. They would lash them together into enormous rafts, cut them into 40-foot chunks, and construct whole living areas on top. Trailers, fourplexes, and homes. From one remote bay to the next, everything was pulled on these floating platforms. Following his marriage to his girlfriend, Molly Roll, Marty and Molly were drawn to venture even further into the forest, away from cities, highways, and all of the conveniences that most people take for granted. Eventually, around 30 miles north of Hannes, close to the beaches of Chilkoot Lake, they constructed their first house. They didn't pick it just for the picture-perfect vistas, even though it was an amazing location. A natural food source was provided by the abundance of spawning salmon in the surrounding streams. Bears are drawn to salmon, of course, and there are many of them. Massive brown bears roamed the area as if they owned it, and Marty subsequently characterized those early days as utterly chaotic. They are all vying for the watershed's glistening coo salmon. Moving from one isolated area of Alaska to another, Marty and Molly persevered through years of wilderness suffering until settling outside of Hannes, which is still very much bear country. Their shared life became as untamed and unrefined as the surrounding terrain. They soon became parents to 4 kids. However, those initial years weren't simple. To put food on the table for Molly and their newborn daughter, Melanie, Marty put in endless hours of work. Then, a scary moment arrived. A hazardous situation prompted them to board an emergency bush plane headed for Whitehorse in the Yukon Territory. When Molly went into labor on the ranch, Melanie was delivered safely there. Later, Marty would speak candidly about those periods, describing them as true hardcrable times. Sometimes he hoped to catch a solitary salmon along the edge of Chilkoot Lake, just enough to feed himself and Molly for the night. But after long, back-breaking hours of logging, he would return home fatigued, hungry, and thinner by the week. Despite how difficult it was, he frequently claimed that those hardships helped to mold him in ways that nothing else could. In 1979, the Raneys moved to the Wasilla region and welcomed Misty, their third child. Marty has been edging closer to this new spot near the shadow of Denali National Park for years. He entered the realm of mountain adventures at this point. In 1986, he made his first ascent of Denali, and it was an event that will always be imprinted in his mind. Tears were running down his face as he pushed toward the last 20 feet of the summit, tears that froze in the bitter cold at once. He was in awe as he stood at the topmost top of North America. No one felt the need to plant a flag or cheer. Rather, the 360 degrees of towering hills and jagged, frozen wilderness that stretched eternally in all directions made him feel small, humbled, and overshadowed. That unvarnished, breathtaking vista was the same as the one he had fallen in love with from a 737's cockpit years before. He felt completely at home in the untamed and merciless wild world. He began formally leading excursions in 1998, and Marty only changed tactics when the harsh winters in Alaska ended the climbing season. Using the most basic materials, stone, wood, and grit, he established Alaska Stone and Log with the goal of constructing and repairing homesteads. The Raneys accepted the fortitude and patience required to live off the grid. Living without running water, heating, electricity, or plumbing, they learned to feel the rhythm of the soil. Over time, the challenging surroundings not only put them to the test, but also made them stronger. Marty's extensive knowledge of Alaska and his musical experience made him an ideal guide for documentary teams during the 1990s. In 1997, he assisted in leading the crew that was filming Alaska Spirit of the Wild. Additionally, he worked as a climber, musician, and second cameraman for Climb Against the Odds for 2 years. But it wasn't until 2013 that he made his big break, appearing on the National Geographic Channel's Ultimate Survival Alaska, which ran from 2013 to 2016. Teams faced harsh terrain, harsh weather, and obstacles that appeared to have been created by Mother Nature on a bad day. The show threw expert survivalists into the middle of Alaska's vast wilderness and essentially said, "Good luck." Marty stood out from the first minute he emerged. To be honest, it was easy to understand why. He wasn't merely portraying a tough outdoor character. He was one. He traversed that terrain with the familiarity of someone who had lived off the land for more than 40 years. As if he were cleaning his own garden, viewers saw him hunt, fish, trap, and build shelters out of natural materials. He was a competitor to be feared and a favorite to watch because of his tenacity, quick thinking, and composure under duress. Tress across deadly terrain, cliff climbs that made palms sweat, blizzards that appeared almost purposefully cruel, and an unvarnished, heart-stopping glimpse at Alaska's perils garnered the show a great deal of attention. The fact that there was no monetary reward, trophy, or enormous check, however, was possibly the most bizarre surprise. It all came down to pride and demonstrating your ability to compete with the Alaskan outdoors. Nevertheless, Marty's notoriety really took off following the conclusion of Ultimate Survival Alaska. In 2016, he became the lifeblood of Homestead Rescue, marking the beginning of his next chapter. He was not the originator of the notion. Marty was presented with an idea from the Discovery Channel that they billed as a return to their early, genuine boots-on-the-ground aesthetic. The mission was what caught Marty's attention. Genuine people, genuine issues, and real fixes. Just assisting poor homesteaders in surviving, no phony drama. Marty went on to say that Discovery had done a fantastic job of identifying participants, normal folks who were living off the grid for their own reasons, rather than the stereotyped apocalyptic types that TV frequently favors. He commended the network for looking for real families that are attempting to live a life outside of the contemporary world. His kids, Misty and Matt, joined the project after he thought about it for a month, turning the series into a whole family endeavor. However, Marty had a major requirement: sincerity. Staged conflicts and screenplays didn't appeal to him. He desired authentic encounters, real stakes, and unadulterated emotion. Because Marty sees each homesteader for the first time upon his arrival, the producers agreed. There is genuine tension, vulnerability, and urgency in every scene. Marty thinks Homestead Rescue is a more genuine series than Ultimate Survival Alaska. And when you see what the Raneys do, you can see why. In every episode, a character attempts to live off the land but fails in risky ways. Food shortages, unclean water, risks to wildlife, deteriorating infrastructure, or unforgiving weather. The Raneys don't suddenly become famous. They come with practical problem-solving skills. They assess what's broken, pinpoint the family's most pressing requirements, and create a strategy to turn the farmhouse into a secure, long-lasting, and useful space. Every member of the family contributes a unique skill. Hunting, tracking, trapping, constructing shelters, and reading the terrain like a well-known tale, Marty is the master of the wild. Misty, the sustainability specialist, uses animals and gardens to improve food systems. Matt is the artisan, a builder who can transform unfinished materials into robust, useful constructions. When combined, they act as a lifeline, saving lives when others are in danger and assisting struggling aspirants in transforming survival into a genuine way of life. The Raney family faces difficulties that would be too much for most people to handle throughout the series. We're talking about harsh weather, erratic fauna, and unexpected setbacks that might quickly undo months of development. However, their resolve remains unwavering in each episode. Their goal remains unchanged: assist homesteaders in recovering their land, re-establishing their future, and reminding them of the initial motivation behind their travel. And you can notice the change by the conclusion of each tale. Families leave with a homestead that is far more habitable, efficient, and sustainable. The Raneys' experience, inventiveness, and unwavering work ethic are all responsible for this. Marty and his family are renowned for their inventiveness in the building industry. They make every effort to repurpose anything they come across on the job site, transforming leftover materials, scrap, or abandoned buildings into ingenious, useful fixes. However, the team looks to the network for assistance when a problem is too large or risky to handle with the resources at hand. Discovery provides the funding required to make the necessary modifications whenever the circumstances call for a major upgrade. At a time when many viewers are considering living closer to the land, Homestead Rescue has received recognition for its emphasis on self-sufficiency and sustainable living. However, it hasn't been immune to criticism like the majority of reality shows. Debate about how realistic the rescue operation is sparked by viewers who claim that some moments are too dramatic or contrived for television. Marty Raney gained notoriety in 2018 for a completely unexpected cause, after a spectacular incident involving a drone operator. Marty challenged drone pilot Justin Pursley while he was operating his brand new drone in the Hatcher Pass region because he thought he was being filmed without authorization. things immediately got out of hand. Pursley filed for a restraining order after Marty damaged Play's drone. Raney said that the drone had been following him around his property at extremely low altitudes and that he thought the flight was unlawful because he had called a trooper dispatcher about it. Remarkably, the altercation ended far more amicably than it started. The two men decided to talk things out later that morning in the parking lot of a grocery shop. According to Pursley, Marty expressed regret and gave him the entire drone's purchase price in cash at this meeting. After that, Pursley informed the courthouse to withdraw the request for a restraining order. Social media was used by both guys to tell their stories, which immediately attracted attention and generated conflicting views. When Marty was sharpening his chainsaw, he heard a buzzing sound and looked up to discover a drone floating right above him and his home. He later said that as he made his way back to his car, the drone followed him for almost 1,000 feet. Conversely, Play clarified that when Marty approached him and his father-in-law, they were merely using a public pull-off to test out the new drone. As the TV personality insisted on knowing why they had been flying over his land, he remembered being taken aback when Raney's trademark cowboy hat appeared. According to Pursley's father-in-law, the drone had been flying high enough to stay off private property. The stories diverged once more when the troops arrived. Marty stated the trooper was unsure and said he didn't know the nuances of drone law in that area, while Play said cops informed him the drone flight was legal. Later, Trooper spokeswoman Megan Peters stated that until the designated trooper could be contacted, specifics were still unknown. Raney shared an update on his social media profile shortly after the incident, stating that he had been thinking about it for hours while driving across Alaska. He apologized for the damage and offered to replace Pursley's drone. Pursley claims that they reconnected. Marty expressed regret and paid the full cost of the drone. Pursley even turned down Raney's offer to record drone footage for a future project. Then, in 2020, Marty encountered yet another round of criticism. This time, it was for a song that had come back to him from his past. Adam and Steve, a song from his 1997 album, started making the rounds on the internet and received a lot of backlash for its homophobic content. The final song stood out for its remark against the increasing acceptance of homosody, even if the majority of the CD was made up of innocuous country melodies. The song's lyrics ridiculed gay pride, alluded to antiquated beliefs, and compared them with what Raney saw as conventional partnerships. After reporting on the disappearance of production assistant Terrence Woods, the subject reappeared within a broader discussion about the workplace culture on some Discovery shows. They made it clear that they disagreed with its message. The same position was taken by All 3 Media America, which had just started co-producing Homestead Rescue, stating that they did not agree with any of the opinions stated in the song. In a separate statement, Discovery also distanced the network from the song and emphasized that it did not align with their beliefs or the show's essence. The network never made it clear if they intended to initiate an internal investigation or take any other action against Raney, but Homestead Rescue continued to air in spite of all the commotion and criticism surrounding the event. Nothing, no pauses, no delays. As if nothing had happened, it remained locked into Discovery's lineup. A catastrophe that no one could have foreseen then struck, when an unexpected and destructive fire destroyed Marty and Molly's cottage in 2021. Life on the Raney Ranch took a drastic change. The family was devastated by the loss. Everything they depended on was gone in an instant, despite years of work being put into the structure over several seasons. The fireplace chimney was initially thought to be the most likely source. The catastrophe might have been caused by the design's allowance for extreme heat. The timing couldn't have been worse for the Raneys. The family was unexpectedly faced with a complete renovation while racing against frigid conditions as winter drew near. There was a lot of strain and tremendous stakes. Some fans questioned whether the tragedy was being overblown for dramatic effect, because Discovery mainly relied on the fire to market the upcoming season. However, as flames spread throughout the cabin, Marty posted a video in real time, pleading for assistance, highlighting the gravity of the situation. In spite of desperate attempts, the building was completely destroyed by the fire within minutes. Fans became eager as parts of the plot were revealed in promotional materials. Many preferred clear answers than tidbits of information strewn throughout several episodes. This gradual release raised questions about whether the tragedy was being used as a plot device rather than a factual narrative. Discovery, however, insisted that the fire was real and described it as the Raney family's worst obstacle to date. They conveyed a sense of urgency in their portrayal of the upcoming season. With winter threatening every step and a heartbreaking loss driving them to put in more effort than ever, the family is frantically trying to rebuild. However, the lack of substantial material and earlier claims that parts of the series were manufactured contributed to the ongoing controversy. Longtime viewers harbored skepticism. The show's image was impacted by the behind-the-scenes stories that former contestants had already shared with the public. Kim and Josh Zabek, who appeared in the second episode of the first season, caused one early issue. When the Raneys came to visit, the couple was already operating Revolutionary Roots Farms, a successful business. However, they were shown in the episode as poor homesteaders whose pigs had created a disastrous situation. Later, the Zbeks filed a lawsuit, alleging that the show had misrepresented their reality. They clarified that the dramatic situations, which included dead animals that weren't theirs and inflated plot lines intended to build suspense, had been staged. They said that up until now, the production team had never taken artistic license. Kim and Josh both expressed outrage at how their farmhouse had been portrayed, even though the conclusion of their case was never made public. Marty answered in a tone that was unexpectedly compassionate. He remembers having a good experience working with Kim and stated that he didn't want to criticize the marriage because she hadn't said anything bad about him specifically. More varied, but generally favorable experiences were recounted by other individuals. The Ozark County Times was informed by Ren and EIE, who starred in Season 2, that they were excited to be involved. They were quick to commend the Raney family, even though they acknowledged that producers modified their story for television, emphasizing errors, leaving out the fact that their cottage was constructed by a professional business, and even showing them using tools in odd ways. They said that Marty was a very diligent man who continued to construct even after the cameras stopped. The Kentucky-based Raines family provided similar insights. They disclosed that their episode's plot was influenced by the production team's request that they provide a list of the projects they were hoping to work on. They recalled Marty's chainsaw prowess with fondness and marveled at how fast he carved a wooden bear while filming. They stressed the sincere generosity displayed by the Raneys throughout, even though they admitted that some scenes were reenacted for television. Then there was the Kondash family from Oregon, who had absolutely no problems. They embraced the Homestead Rescue team with open arms, facing dire financial difficulties and the demise of their wood mill business. They were able to stabilize their homestead, restructure their operations, and restart their business with the assistance of the Raneys. They attribute their current success to the show, which helped them turn things around. When taken as a whole, these tales provide a fascinating yet complicated picture a program that combines television storytelling with actual adversity, a family dealing with public scrutiny and natural disasters, and a group of homesteaders whose lives were impacted by the Raneys' direction, sometimes in untidy ways and other times in positive ways.